Are you dreaming of the lifestyle that comes with successful trading? Well, it's time to make it a reality. Welcome to the Trading Ascension podcast, where you can discover methods to improve your trading results by focusing on your trading psychology. I'm Jason E., your guide on this path to trading improvement, self-discovery, and self-mastery. Together, we'll explore the personal and spiritual growth journey of profitable day trading. Prepare to unlock the secrets of the trader's mind and align your inner self with your personal success. Listen to this episode if you want to ascend to new levels of trading excellence and personal development. This is Trading Ascension, supporting your journey to mastering trading psychology and personal growth for consistent profits. Let's elevate your trading and your consciousness starting now. In today's episode, we'll dive into a powerful way to tackle some of the most common challenges that we all face on the day trading journey. What's fascinating is that many of these recurring issues, our trading nemesis, often stem from the same root cause, that thing within us. I'm excited to talk about this today because it impacts every trader at every level. It's going to be a banger of a show. Now, I'm not claiming that this is a magic bullet that will instantly erase all your trading struggles, but I promise the awareness and the insight we build around this topic today will move you meaningfully closer to the ultimate trading goal. And that goal, when you approach trading as a personal and spiritual growth journey, that goal is to operate from the mindset and energy of your already successful self. So that when you sit down in front of the charts, you're thinking, you're acting, and you're feeling in a way that naturally supports following your plan and consistently making decisions that serve your best interest. So we'll talk about the culprit behind so many trading issues. And I'm not going to, slow build this one up. It's the ego. You'll probably heard that before, right? It's not the first time, but not like this. Because when we say trading with an ego or try to trade without an ego, what does it really mean, right? What does that mean for us traders? And more importantly, how does it actually show up in our trading behaviors? Now, by the end of this episode, you'll have the tools to start deconstructing the ego's negative impact on your trading journey. So stick around. If you're serious about improving as a trader, this episode is for you. And I don't plan to spend much time dwelling on the problem today. We'll get right to solutions soon. But first, we need to clearly identify what we're up against. That way, we can separate ourselves from the actions that aren't in our best interests. Now, that's not always easy because it's so common and natural for us to fall into the trap of believing that we are what we experience. But there's a world of difference between who we are and what we're feeling at any given moment. For example, saying I'm experiencing frustration is very different from saying I am frustrated. The first, it recognizes frustration as a passing state that is just happening to us, right? Not something that defines us. The second, if you say I am frustrated, it claims that experience as our body and our identity, right? It blurs the lines between self and emotion. Now, when we do that, those feelings, they tend to stick around a little bit longer. And when we want to move on, it's hard to let go because the emotion feels like it's part of us. So we have to have a state or a mental state that lets us pass emotional states, right? So it doesn't drag out. Now, when you do stay in these emotional states and they start to lock themselves in just because of repetition, and that's what becomes part of our character, right? So we want to avoid bad habits over long periods of time. Now, one of the ego's tricks is to get us attached to these experiences and convince us that these passing states are actually who we are. That's not true. And that's why it's so important to learn to separate ourselves or our sense of self from what we're experiencing in any given moment, right? That strong sense of self allows us to understand that we are not just the things that happen to us. We're bigger than that. Now, one important thing to understand about the ego is the present moment feels like forever. The ego doesn't really experience time and space the way we do, right? You can see this in trading. When you're riding that high after a win, the ego will say, oh, I've got this. I'll never lose a trade again, right? I've made it. But deep down, we know that losing trades is inevitable. Or on the, on the other side, after a string of losses, the ego insists, I can't win, right? I'll never get this. In both cases, the ego convinces us that whatever we're feeling right now will last forever. Again, that's not true. Now, you can also notice this timeless quality of the ego when you try to meditate, right? If you've ever tried to sit down and meditate, and I know this community does that a lot, but the ego, if it understood time, a 10-minute meditation would be easy. And it would just say, okay, I'm going to chill. See you in 10. But instead, the ego panics, right? Because the being turned off is death. It's dying at that moment, which it thinks is going to last forever. So the ego's like, I'm going to die, right? Don't turn me off. Listen to me. And that's when it gets clever, right? Throwing distractions your way. You can't meditate until you figure this out and figure that out and all the problems you have in life, right? Wait, you don't need to be quiet. You got to scratch. You need to scratch that itch now. Is the door locked? Did you leave the oven on? Don't ignore me. And that's the ego talking, right? You've meditated, you know what I mean? But that's why today we need a specific order of addressing the ego so we can create some separation and avoid getting pulled into that head-to-head battle that honestly, at times we're not equipped to win. So with this approach today, just hang in there through any of the mind chatter or resistance that may come up within yourself. And think of the order of today's show like sweeping a staircase, right? If you start at the bottom and you keep pushing dirt down on the steps, as you work your way up, you're just going to create more mess at the lower steps, right? So you have to go up, work your way down. It's going to be a mess. But if you start at the top, right, you do things in the right way. You start at the top of that staircase and you can just sweep all the way down in order and you can be good the first time, right? Have a thorough job done. So that's why the order of this information matters today. But don't worry. Again, we won't linger too long in the issue before we get to the solutions. So we're talking about how the ego affects our trading. And so before we talk about, what that looks like, what is the ego, right? How do we define that? In past episodes, we've explored the different parts of the human brain, the ego, the id, etc., how they develop from childhood. Now, for trading improvement, as far as this episode, we don't have to dig into that, right? We won't revisit any of that at all, or we're not going to dig into any, childhood trauma. Although letting go of baggage is always helpful. But for today, all you need to know is this. When I say ego, I'm talking about the everyday psychology definition, which is a person's sense of self-importance and self-esteem, right? You could put self-worth in there. So when you hear me mention ego, think of it as the part of you or even the department of your mind that manages, creates, and monitors your self-esteem and your self-importance. Right now, of course, this department is shaped by early life experience, that taught us when to raise or lower our self-worth. That's its main job, is to protect you. But again, we won't dive into anything in the past. We're going to address this right here in the now. So understanding this helps us approach the topic with grace and without judgment, right? And that's important because releasing what no longer serves us is required, and compassion is required to do that. Compassion towards ourselves. So by letting go of these old disempowering patterns, we can start to trade and live with more freedom and clarity, and trade with more surety and more confidence. So from understanding what the ego is, the department that focuses on our self-worth and our self-importance, from there, let's now explore some real life examples of how the ego plagues us as day traders. So here are some examples, no specific orders. I'm just going to talk about the how and the why that these things affect us. So the ego, right? Again, the department of the brain in charge of self-esteem and self-importance. It has one major goal: I'll take a quick sip here. And that goal is a focus on safety. Now, remember, we're talking about the mind. So when we think of safety, understand this, real world threats can violate safety, but in the mind, things like hurt feelings, undesired emotions, they all impact our self-worth and esteem. So as we think about why the ego does this, I'll mention that as I go through kind of this list here. And I'm just looking over these subject areas. Just understand the ego is trying to make us feel safe. And I hope you can be thankful for that. Quick break here, and let's talk about that gratitude, right? We want to have gratitude towards the ego and that part of our brain, not just because it's a great emotion, but also because when we look at our lives, there are so many automated processes that govern our existence, things that just happen and that we could not exist without, right? So because of that, we can rest assured, at least I believe this, we can rest assured that we're special and that we're created with love, right? You don't even have to breathe yourself, right? That just blows my mind. It's automated. So the ego's automation, it may be hindering us today, but at some point, that same ego objective that we now need to dissolve, at some point, it was life-saving. And that's why it was created from the ego's point of view. So of these things, some of these things, as I listed, you may not experience it, right? Maybe not at all. Maybe you've experienced it before. Maybe it's yet to come. Maybe you already overcome it. So not all of these issues may relate to you, but the point is that they all have the same egoic source, right? So let's start with the basic truth to become consistent, right? The foundation is you need a written strategy and a trading plan. And what this does is this creates measurable input and output data that you can analyze to improve, right? Because you have a systematic way of inputting data, so you can trust the data that comes out. But here is where the ego steps in and it starts playing games. The ego whispers to the trader who has a strategy well-defined, to the trader who has a trading plan that's defined. The ego says, hey, I don't know if we should do this. If I write down my plan and don't follow it, our self-esteem is going to take a hit. So it tries to protect itself. Maybe it convinces you that you're trading intuitively, right? That there's no clear right or wrong. And when it does that, the ego stays safe. But this isn't, as a new trader, it's not intuition. It's the ego avoiding accountability. When you don't want to write that plan down, right? It's the ego avoiding accountability, saying, hey, I can never be wrong if there's no definite right. The psychology or the psychological need to be right is a major ego trap. It shows up as an inability to accept losses or admit mistakes. Traders might hold on to losing positions, just hoping that they're going to be proven right, which often leads to bigger losses, of course. The ego can resist acknowledging error because it feels like that's a personal failure, not just a trading setback. And this undermines the objectivity and the risk management that we need as traders. Trading demands it. Sometimes traders avoid committing to a plan or trade because they fear they won't follow through perfectly. And the ego is terrified of not living up to its own standards. So it creates hesitation. It misses opportunities. It goes into what they call analysis paralysis. And this also shows up in record keeping. If you don't write down that losing trade or how mad you were, if you don't write that down in your journal, you can ignore it and you can protect your self-esteem. In simulation trading, this pops up too, right? Instead of addressing what might be wrong, you might just increase your position size just to get back to green, right? Like, oh, I took that loss. I'm going to put on 50 lots. Let me get back in green just so I can feel good rather than learn. You see, this in trading forms and live streams. You see it in both. People arguing, making bold predictions, judging others' trades. The ego wants to feel superior, right? It wants to dominate other traders and even the market itself. Humility just goes out the window. And I've been there myself. You know, sometimes I've taken the same trade at the same resistance level multiple times, convinced like it has to go down here. It just has to, right? Then I'm reviewing my trades like, wait, did this trade get duplicated? Right? And I'm like, nope, it wasn't a data error. It was my ego refusing to let go and refusing to be wrong. So this urge to dominate, it leads to overconfidence, excessive risk taking, and ignoring your trading plan. Instead of following the process, the ego just seeks this validation. It blurs the line between who you are and what you experience, right? So wins will boost our self-esteem. Losses feel like personal failures. And then this emotional roller coaster starts to cloud our judgment, and it leads to inconsistent decisions. Have you ever, found yourself not wanting to take certain actions, although you know you should? And you might be like, you know what, that Jason E., he keeps talking about data, but F that dude, right? Or, 5 other traders just said the same thing to me, but you're resistant to taking the right actions to enhance your trading journey. If so, it could be the ego. Now, this is just a short list. The ego is clever and it can pop up in many ways, right? So it may be the cause of issues I didn't mention. Not an exhausting list. But let's summarize what we highlighted here so we can talk about solutions and get down to those action steps. Action steps. So ego traps, right? Things like the need to be right. That's like holding losses, not cutting losses, poor objectivity, the need to dominate, overconfidence, risk taking, ignoring your plan just to seek validation from winning, downplaying, the results of other traders. That kind of goes with both categories there. Self-worth, being tied to results. It forces us to have emotional swings, inconsistent decisions, and demotivation, right? Can really take you down energetically. Another ego trap is fear of just damaging the ego, right? And that causes inaction. So you hesitate, you have this fear, you miss trades. Again, analysis paralysis. So all those things, and again, it's not an exhausted list, could be caused by that one source, the ego, and the ego's goals of protecting your self-worth and your self-esteem. And sometimes those goals don't mesh and jive with how we have to show up as a trader. So how can we overcome the ego's negative influence in our trading? First, let's be clear. You can't get rid of the ego. So let's just throw that idea out, right? The ego is part of the mind, and all it needs is new directives. It needs you to say, hey, I'm safe, and this is the new plan. The most effective mindset shift is to redefine trading success, not as winning trades or growing your P&L, but as your ability to consistently follow your trading plan. When your self-worth and sense of accomplishment are tied to plan adherence and discipline and execution, then you can sidestep a lot of the ego traps. You aren't the outcomes of your actions. You are your actions. There's difference there. And that's great news. It's great news because your actions are fully within your control. So give your ego a new directive, a new game plan, right? And it starts with your strategy. When XYZ occurs, we follow the plan, we take action. And the reframing losses as, data for improvement rather than personal failures, it's going to start to reduce emotional swings and impulsive decisions. So let's break down some core decisions here, right? Just things here. I got a list. We'll talk about 5 things and I'll go into 11 more. And then we'll wrap it up. But the first thing with core solutions is you have to develop a trading plan and you have to rigorously follow that trading plan. So again, you're defining and I say again, because we've talked about this on a lot of shows, you have to define your entry, your exit criteria, your in-trade management, your risk management, your daily limits, and your lessons learned. If it's not written down, it's not real. So this structure starts to reduce emotional and impulsive decisions. And then we have to work on detaching self-worth from results, because in both philosophy and psychology, detaching self-worth from outcomes, wins and losses is essential. The ego will always try to protect your self-esteem. So you might consciously, implement accountability, taking full responsibility for your actions, not blaming the market, not blaming others. And that's a way to start detaching. And part of that is radical acceptance. This would be number 3 here. Accept losses and setbacks as inevitable. All traders lose, right? And this is going to start to neutralize the ego's defense reactions and allows you to value lessons over emotional reactions. You start to love those losses because you can learn from them. You can remove it from the future because it happened today. And that's why a focus on data is so important in this community. For journaling, right? If you're having journaling is like this. It's like if you had a doorbell camera for your mind. It lets you see clearly what's happening, making ego patterns and emotional reactions visible so you can take action on them, right? And imagine without that doorbell cam, you don't know who's at the door. You say, "Who is it?" And whatever they answer is what you believe. And for traders that are lost, and I've said this before, the number one thing that we're going to default to when we're not taking this action and working with the ego and following a plan and a strategy, the number one thing you hear traders say in this state is, "I just need to win more." Oh, I just need to win more, right? So the whole time they're twiddling on some things that are outcome based instead of the input, the things that are going to create them actually winning more. And then you have to practice mindfulness. Just observing your mind, right? It's meditation. There's a lot of things, but just observing your mind is going to create distance between your sense of self and your experiences. It helps you notice emotions like the anger, the frustration, right? The highs, the lows, overconfidence. And it helps you notice those things without identifying with them. So those are going to be, some of the things as the foundation to get us started. Now, I want to talk about 11 of what I just think are the most effective steps, not an exhausted list, but just some things I came up with as our action steps for this week. So I want you to look at this like a checklist, right? This is a checklist for overcoming ego-driven pitfalls in your day trading. So you have these 11, you want to write these down. You just want to check them off. Make sure you're addressing these. Make sure you're bringing awareness to these, meditating on these topics, right? Being mindful on these areas and developing past these areas. Number 1 is embrace losses as learning opportunities, right? Are you embracing losses as learning opportunities? If not, how can you implement that more in your business? Treat losses as just part of the process. Review losing trades objectively for the lessons, not for blame, right? Not for ridicule, self-ridicule or self-depreciation, right? Just for lessons. And then this was part of the other list, but number 2 is going to be practice mindfulness and emotional awareness. So using mindfulness in ways like meditation and in the journaling, it helps you notice these ego-driven thoughts without acting on them, without being part of them. And then 3, you want to prioritize process over outcome. Focus on executing your plan well, the things that you can control, right? The actions you take. When you click that mouse button, you control that. Then it's out of your hands. So take very seriously the things that you actually have control over. And you can reward yourself for the discipline, right? Not just profits. Be excited about plan adherence. And then strict risk management. Of course, that's part of the success generator system. Always use stop losses. Now, some people don't put them on the chart, right? But they have in their mind a point of where enough is enough, right? There's no successful day trader that doesn't put stop losses on the chart and doesn't have a mental stop loss, right? There's no one that's just going to bleed until their account's gone, right? So on the chart, off the chart, have stop losses. and never move them to increase your risk. 5, avoid overtrading and revenge trading, right? And that's the ego's need to just feel right. Trade only when your setup is present. Don't chase losers. Don't chase losses. Number 6, you have to conduct thorough market analysis. And you have to base these decisions on what your strategy is, not just hunches, right? Your back testing, your experience, your live market testing, a fine-honed process, because along with all of that, you are also your edge. And so that was number 6. Number 7 is take responsibility and avoid blame. Own your trading outcomes, own your emotions, own your actions. Stop blaming. We're using losses as feedback to improve. Not to blame. Again, not to talk down to ourselves. You can do this. Don't tell yourself you can't. Number 8 is you have to adapt and evolve. So once you start getting this data, right, you have to update your plan because market conditions change. Don't cling to being right. Cling to being effective. And one way to see this is number 9, journaling, right? You're recording your trades, your emotions, and decisions. And all of that is going to build self-awareness, right? And you'll start to see the places where, oh, you know what? My ego might have been jumped the gun a little early there just to feel good. Might have got out of that trade in green just to see the green, just to win. But it's hard to see it in the real time. So journaling helps. 10, accountability partners or mentors, right? If you trust somebody, again, that's keywords. You trust someone, they're going to be supportive, not bring down your energy or not show a lack of support. If you have that person, other trading buddies, share your plan and your results with someone, right? So you can practice the discipline of being accountable to the discipline, and you can get feedback. And then the last thing, number 11, schedule reviews, right? When we talk about data and how to analyze data, it's because I do this in a weekly review. So review your trades regularly and focus on reviewing the trades, your planned adherence, focus on the process, and then turning that into improvements that you can implement into the next week. So if we take these steps, we can slowly start to separate ourselves from the ego, which is the first part of the battle. And then once we get that separation, we can start to see things that we can eliminate and actions that can be replaced into building better habits and showing up in a way that supports us acting in our own best interests as a day trader, because the ego is behind a lot of our trading issues. Can't stress enough how quieting the mind is, meditation, and just really getting a jump on what's trying to sabotage you. And I won't even say sabotage, what's trying to get you to run an old program that maintains your self-worth, but doesn't produce the outcome that we want as a day trader. So it's just an update. It's an update to your human operating system. Hope this was helpful. Thank you for tuning in. I appreciate you. I believe in your trading journey. Remember, you got this. Your trading dreams can become a reality. Keep at it, my friend. And here's to being the hero of your story. Thank you for joining me on this episode of the Trading Ascension Podcast. I hope you're gaining valuable insights to support your day trading journey. If you found value today, I'd appreciate it if you could follow me on Instagram, Real Trading Ascension, subscribe on YouTube, and give this episode a like. Your support helps me grow and bring you even better content. Be sure to visit tradingascension.com for free resources, exclusive tips, and tools designed to elevate your trading. I'm inviting you back. Join me in the next episode as we continue to ascend together. Until then, keep ascending, stay mindful, and remember, your journey to mastering trading psychology and consistent profits starts with your commitment to personal growth. Yeah.